Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about Construct 2 and just the overview of what it does and why it's a little bit different from everything else and why you should use it. So after you've downloaded the software, you're going to be presented with something that looks like this. I'm not sure if my windows are exactly correct to the way yours might look, but that's okay because we're going to customize all of that in this lecture. So Construct 2 is a visual scripter. It's an editor that makes it really, really easy for you to prototype logic, and that's what I like about it the most. Now, I've used a lot of different languages. I've started with BASIC, I moved to ActionScript 2.0, then ActionScript 3.0, back when Flash was a thing. I did a bunch of GameMaker language, which I still like to do. I've done C#, and I can tell you this, that they're all great languages. They can all achieve what you want to achieve, but Construct 2 lets you prototype in minutes. Literally, you can have something up in minutes. And for me, that's what I like using it the most for. It lets me really just get all of my ideas of how I want certain gameplay mechanics to happen, and I can do that in seconds. And then if I really want to, I can go try to do it in GameMaker, or I can go try to do it with C# and Unity, or use Unreal, or whatever it is that I want to use. And that's really the point here, is that Construct 2 is going to be your best way to learn how to program if you've never programmed before, and that's what this course is really about. It's just kind of showcasing Construct 2 and how to program with it and how to learn logic, how to really understand what goes on in those languages that make it confusing for a lot of beginners. So that's really what this course is about. If you know how to program, you're probably not going to get much out of it. However, if you're brand new to Construct 2 and you already know how to program, then this course might just be a good refresher to really understand the software, since it is different software from anything you're used to using. So with that being said, you're going to see our ribbon here. I usually hide this ribbon, and I usually don't even use this skin. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the View tab over here, and I'm going to change the I'm going to change the style to Visual Studio Styles, Visual Studio 2012 Blue. This is probably the skin you're used to seeing on all of my YouTube videos and all of my other courses. And this is the skin that I chose to use. I guess it's because I'm used to Visual Studio or whatnot, but I think it looks fine. It's up to you. You're probably going to have to restart Construct 2 for all the changes to take place, but for right now, it's totally fine. Okay, so now that we have our skin, our theme, let's look at our windows here. Notice we haven't even made a new project yet. So we have our properties, our layers, our objects, our projects, and our tile map. These are all the windows that are open. Now, you can use whichever windows you want to use, whichever are helpful to you, and in case you accidentally close one, you can just open it up again by clicking right here in the View tab like so. I don't like having the objects bar anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that. I do like having the tile maps bar, but I like to put it over here. So I'm going to drag this and put it down just like that. And I'm going to actually take the projects bar and I'm going to put this here in the middle. I'm going to move my layers down here to be in the middle as well. So this is how I like to set up my Construct 2, because right here is where our canvas is going to go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close our ribbon just by doing this. And you can see here that I have this below the ribbon, which let me make a new project and I'll show you how you can do that. So File, New retro style project. Now this is what I use for pretty much all of my games if I'm not using my own template. I use the retro style project to make a pixelized game. So double click on this and it's going to open this up. Now these will be colored when I restart Construct 2 since I changed the theme, but right now they just kind of have the basic Visual Studio theme attached to them, but when I restart, these are going to be colored tabs, which kind of look cool. But you can see here that this canvas is pretty large, and I really do like it this way, where I can have the entire canvas, especially when it comes to programming. I can see all of my events without anything cropping out of it, I guess. And then if you look right here, just as I mentioned, you can see the quick access toolbar, and you can click right here to show above the ribbon. And once it's above, you can just click to show below. You can also add in more commands here, which is something that I like to do at some point, but I find more often than not, I have to kind of reset my Construct 2 every now and then for videos like this. So I just kind of left it as the default. So I'm just going to add this in. It's a separator, and then I'm going to go over here. Let's see what else we can add in. Let's go to our view, since that seemingly has a lot of helpful things like our grid height and width. Let's add that in. Let's see what else we can add in. You can even put in the toggle in case you want the object bar open, and you can hit OK, and you can see those will pop up right there. And when there's something useful, or when you actually need to use these, then you can just kind of pop these up. So that's kind of useful. I already don't like this, so I'm going to go back, and I can actually remove all of these that I just added in there. The separator is kind of nice. Oh, the one thing I do like to have in here is the single file. Generally, what I like to do is I like to put a lot of these in here, but for right now, having a single file, at least for me, is important. If you don't know what a single file is, Construct 2 saves as capx file. It's basically like a zip folder for your Construct 2 project. So technically, if you renamed a capx to .zip, you can open it up as a Construct 2 project. So when you say file save as project, it's going to save all the files, all the animations and whatnot. But if you save it as a single file, then it's going to bundle it as a zip, and then you can send it to your friends. They can open it without having to actually load up the entire Construct 2 project. So it's pretty much the way to deploy your capx file if you're going to give your game project to anybody, if you're helping somebody out or anything like that. So, okay. That's the basic rundown of Construct 2 in terms of the editor, but let's take a look at what makes Construct 2 really special. So we have our layout here, and this is our layout 1, and we're going to get into this obviously a little bit more, but really I just want to show you the basics behind this, and then we're going to look at an example project of mine, and then we'll go from there. But what we have here is our layout, and you can see our layout size is 1280 by 1024. Now, this is up to you what size of the layout you want to make your level. This is basically the level size, so it could be anything from 2500 to 60, or that would be like an auto runner game, I don't know. Or it could be something HD, 1920 by 1080. Or what I usually do is I usually do 640 by 360, something like that. Then you have your project properties here, and you have a whole bunch of settings and configuration settings, which I go over a lot of in a lot of my other courses where we're actually building a game. And I don't want to bog you down with that because this is all about logic. This isn't about any config settings, but I do want to show you the window size here, and that's going to be the actual size of the window when it launches. If you're launching in a browser, it's probably not going to look the same size, but if you change your preview browser to desktop, which in this case is Node WebKit, which you have to install separately, I'll leave a link in the next lecture so you can install that if you haven't already. That is going to pop this up in desktop mode, and once it does that, it'll actually pop it up with the window size, 320 by 180, which for most games is extraordinarily small, but for a pixel game, you want to be able to scale up, so it works perfectly. But for some games, maybe you want this to be 1280 by 720 and have it be kind of HD. So that's kind of up to you. But that's more in relations to making games. I am going to show you just how simple it is to make a game right now in Construct 2 and why I like it for prototyping. But then we're going to just dive into logic and really compare the logic to other languages, or at least talk about it and figure it out from there. So I'm going to delete this text object. I'm going to add what is called a behavior. So in Construct 2, behaviors are these pre-packaged objects. They're these object types that you can add to pretty much anything. And this is the main drive behind Construct 2. So, for example, in Game Maker, you have to program in the friction and the gravity and everything else that goes with programming your player platform controls and moving it. You have to program in the collisions. In Construct 2, you don't. And that's kind of the beauty of it because it's all like one click. And once you figure out how to make it work for your liking, for what you may have played in a normal game, like you went on Steam and you played this game and you want to mimic that, you can still get that. You can still achieve that. So here's how you would do that. You would just add a solid behavior to this. Let me grab my behaviors over here. And I like to make all of these a little bit bigger so everybody can see this. And let me add this. So basically what I just did here, it's not really intuitive, honestly, but all I have to do here is I click add behaviors and I click add new, and then I pop up the add behavior window. You know, maybe they're going to fix this. They are working on a Construct 3, but no matter what, the logic will stay the same. I'm pretty positive on that, so it doesn't really matter how I use the system. So I'm going to add in, I keep trying to add this in. I'm going to add in the solid behavior here. So let's go right over here under attributes. We have our solid behavior. you're going to notice that I have some behaviors that you don't have, which are plugins that you can install. So like any good software, you can actually modify it and you can add in all of these plugins by the community, which is what I've done here. So if you see them and you're confused, that's what they are. So we're going to add the solid behavior to this tiled background. And right off the bat, I'm already handling for collision. Like right off the bat, Construct 2 already has that finish for me, and I don't even need to ask questions. And that's really the important part about Construct 2 behaviors, is you don't have to ask questions, you just have to tweak the properties to your liking and make it act as if it was a game, which is what everything does, which is what every programming language does. So anyway, what we're going to do here is we're going to double click, and now we have all of our object types. There's a lot. We're going to go over most of them, but things like the media and the monetization and all this stuff we don't really use often. These are way more specific. We might use Node WebKit in case you target desktop. You might use the Skira Arcade in case you publish to the actual Construct 2 arcade. I mean, you might use Facebook if you're making a Facebook game, but these are less common in daily use. And what's more common is the general and the data storage. And the form controls are kind of common, but not really. Multiplayer obviously is common if you're making a multiplayer game, but really these are the objects that we have to add, and it's really the general objects and the data and storage. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a sprite object, and I'm going to click over here, and when I do, it's going to, as you saw, replace my mouse cursor with a crosshair, and then I can actually click on the canvas there, and I can make a new sprite. And when I do that, it's going to open up the image editor in Construct 2. Now, I'll be honest, the image editor in Construct 2 is pretty it's lacking a lot of features. And to some, that might not be cool. You know, you might not like to have to bring in art assets from other programs, or you might have to get somebody to draw art for you, because there's really not a lot of tools here to really do much with, unlike GameMaker. Which I guess it would be the closest comparison to Construct 2 at the moment. So really, you kind of have to do with that. You have to make your art in another piece of software like Photoshop or Sprite or Pixel Edit, whatever it is. And what we're going to do here is we're going to set this image to 32 by 32, and without having to draw anything, I'm just going to color this in with the fill. So you can kind of manage with some basics, but there's really not a whole lot you can take that to. So what we're going to do, and that's really not a bad thing about Construct 2, because you can really get away with adding in all of your artwork just like you would in any other software like Unity, where you have to import your artwork anyway. It's just really bare bones, but that's okay, because we're here to focus on the logic. This is just a quick, in-depth-ish kind of overview of Construct 2. So we have our tiled background here, which we don't even need to go over, but basically it's just going to tile whatever drawing you have, just like that. Pretty self-explanatory. So we have our sprite. Let's call this our player. I like to always use the object prefix and then use an underscore. It's just my preference. What I need to do here is I need to add a behavior to it. So I'm going to grab my behaviors window. Hopefully it'll save the position of my behaviors window. There it goes. And I'm going to add the general, or no, it's under movement, the platform behavior, just like this. And I'm done. I have now created a platform game. I didn't have to program friction. I didn't have to program gravity. Didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to program double jump, nothing. Right out of the box, I've made a platform game successfully. Let me look at I set it to NWJS. Let me hit play. And let's look at what NWJS does. So you can see it pops up kind of small. And you actually can't really see our view here because it's not in the window. So we'll fix that in a second. But if I use the arrow keys right off the bat, I can already jump. I can already do all these things. Let me take it a step further instead of having to fix this. So let me show you this. Our layout size is this. This is our layout size. This is 640 by 360 right here. And this dotted line, this is our window size. This is how big our application loads as, right here, this window. And if you don't have any type of camera object interacting, then this is the view of your game. So what I had here was this, which is outside of the view, completely outside of the dotted line, and then my player, which was kind of half in and half out. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to add in another behavior. I'm just going to hit add, and I'm going to grab the scroll to behavior, just like this, which always centers the view on this object or at the midpoint of multiple objects. There you go. Nice explanation given to you. That is a good perk of Construct 2. So now if I look at this object here, and when I click off an object, then there's only the layout properties, but when I click on an object, it gives me that object's specific properties. When we look at this object, you can see now I have two behaviors. I have a platform behavior and a scroll to behavior. And the platform behavior has a ton of properties that I can edit. And this is where I think a lot of the Construct 2 users who are just starting out and really don't give Construct 2 enough of a chance, this is where it goes wrong. Because for a lot of people, one, they might want more control over this, maybe, but also, how do you find the right settings? What's the right balance for this, and what makes this feel like any other platform game? And that comes with experimenting, and that's what I figured out. So my max speed that I like to use for most of my games is 150, and my jump strength is 450. To me, this represents every platform game I've ever played on Steam or wherever it is, whatever console I'm using. That's the settings I like to use. We don't even need to mess with any of these other settings. So you can see here that there are two other things that I kind of want to mess with. Let me just kind of move this over. And that is the double jump and the default controls. So by default, the controls are the arrow keys. And if I turn this to no, then we no longer have the arrow keys as movement. And then we're going to have to go in and program this ourselves, which is fine. And we can do that. And I always do that. I never leave default controls on. But for this, I'm just going to leave it on because we don't really need to program that at the moment. But if we look at double jump, maybe that's something we want to have in since we have our controls already done. We're already controlling our player with the arrow keys. We're already scrolling to with the scroll to behavior. To double jump, all I have to do is double click this and I'm done. And now we've implemented that logic. So behaviors are very, very, very powerful right out of the box. And that's the really nice thing about Construct 2. So now we already have a camera object following our player. We can look left and right, and now we're actually kind of moving at a more reasonable speed, and we're jumping at a more reasonable height, more reasonable strength, because we tweaked that to a normal strength that I would call from any other game I've ever played. And now we can even double jump right there. So if I jump and then I jump again, we have a double jump already programmed in. That would have taken you about, I know this video is really long already. This is already like a 17-minute video, but in reality, you can have this up in less than a minute. This is done in less than 1 minute, and that would have taken you at least 10 to 15 minutes in any other software, no matter what. Even if there are other good prototyping softwares out there, whether it's phaser.js or whether it is GameMaker, which they're both great for prototyping just like Construct 2. But you can't deny that adding in a behavior just speeds up the workflow so much. So that's the overview of Construct 2. I wasn't planning on making this video super long, so I apologize for that because this is all about the logic. We're going to get into how things work. And you know what? Before we go, let's actually just program in our default controls logic since I mentioned it. So let's turn this off and let me hit play. And you'll be able to see right off the bat here that now I don't have any arrow key controls whatsoever. They don't work. We turned them off. So let's go into our event sheet. Now, if you look in our layout here, you can see that our event sheet is using event sheet 1. So if I rename this to layout 1 event, now it's using layout 1 event. So that's how you can actually tell what event sheet for which layout, which is corresponding with which. You have to make that connection, and sometimes they do get messed up. So let's go into our layout 1 event and let's add in. So automatically by using a retro style project, you're already given the general objects in your project. So I can already go into the keyboard and I can create an event from there. If key is down, and let's say the right arrow key is down, then what do we want to do? Well, we want to add the action for our player. And once you see all the actions, don't get overwhelmed with them. But look right here where we already have these actions added on to us. So basically, those behaviors are like add-ons. They just come with Construct 2. And then the ones that I added are just third-party add-ons. And you can see here that all of these are the general add-ons that are shipped with Construct 2. And then when you add in the specific behaviors, then you get those actions as well. So right here, I can go into my platform actions and I can simulate the control to move the player to the right, just like that. So it's really simple when it comes to logic. This is like as easy as it gets. So now if the keyboard and you're pressing the right arrow, move the player to the right. let me copy and paste this, and let me make this to the left. And right here, what I have to do is I actually have to press the button on the keyboard. So let me press that, hit OK, and we're going to simulate control to the left. Very simple. Let's copy and paste this again. And now I'm going to do this for the up arrow, and we're going to jump, which is our other simulated control that we are given. So all of this is great, but by doing it manually this way, it gives us more options to doing other types of input. And how would we do that? So by default, we have a margin, which you can see is right here. Let me zoom in all the way. You can see that this is our margin, the parts that is not selected. We have a margin, and then we have our event, our condition. And what I want to do is I want to copy and paste our condition. And by doing so, I'm creating an operational and statement. That's what this is. And this is very important because in regular programming, I'm going to make a comment by pressing Q, an and could look like this. If this, oops, where's the and this are true, then simulate player moving rights, just like that. That's what it could look like. You could have those two ampersands act as an and, which that's what it could look like behind the scenes. We don't know because Construct 2 does it for us. So right off the bat, all I have to do is copy this, and I'd obviously have to change the control here. You know, I'd have to change this to be something else like the D key. Now I have to hold down the right arrow and the D arrow, or the D key, just to move this player to the right. And that's how you can actually create different kinds of controls, which is really cool. But obviously this is not useful for us. This and statement is incorrect here. So what can I do to actually make this correct? Well, I can use an operational or statement. And to do that, I can right click on this and make an or block. Or the shortcut for that is I can hit Y on the keyboard. So I can select this event here, and I usually select the margin, and I can hit Y just like that. So now I have a Y, and I can actually do this for all of these. If I select this event and I hit Y, it's actually going to create the or behind the scenes. You just don't see it. So if I control click this to copy it and push it down, now you can see I have the or. If I control click this again, you can see that there's no or block here until I right click and make the or block, or again, I could hit Y and turn it on. So now let me just wire these up correctly as well. So now if the left arrow is down or the A key is down, or if the up arrow is down or the W key is down, and now I have W, A, and D movement as well, and we've actually consolidated it pretty well. We have 3 events, and now we have 2 different inputs, 2 different triggers to actually control our player, which normally would take you a considerable amount of time to program if you don't know what you're doing, if you're just starting out. So here's what I can do now. I can move right, left, and I can jump, and I can double jump with the arrow keys, or I can hold down D, A, just like that. So pretty cool right off the bat. I hope this gave you somewhat of an overview if you haven't used Construct 2 before. There's a whole lot of stuff. Obviously, you can see all of these properties. You don't have to memorize any of this stuff at the moment, but learning logic this way, with the way our event sheet is laid out, I'm telling you, is just the fastest way to learn how to program. If you've never programmed anything before, or if you have programmed something before, you're going to notice that the programming part of you will take off because this is so easy, because this is so laid out in front of us. And I know I'm saying that this is easy, and I know it's not for a lot of you. When you're just starting out, it can be hard. But even if you have programmed before, or even if you haven't, Construct 2 is going to make it easier. So as you can see, I'm getting carried away, but I really do hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.